Hey friends, it's Laurie. I'm so happy you're here. Today I have 13 of my favorite gnomes, sock bunnies, and elf crafts. Most of my supplies are from the Dollar Tree and they are all super easy to make. I'm starting the butterfly gnome by using the wings headband. For the beard, I'm using some troll hair and I found both of these in the toy department. I'm going to make the body out of this Dollar Tree striped sock. I'm making my gnomes from things that I had on hand, so I'm going to use the bottom part of this round gift box. These accents are completely optional, but I'll be using the outside petals of these daisies along with some of these yellow flowers that I'll also be using for the bumblebee. You'll need some paint for the nose, and stuffing for the hat is optional. I'm using the table tennis ball as a nose for all three projects. You'll need something to weigh down the body, so I'm using these white Dollar Tree stones that I had on hand. I cut my hat pattern in a point. It's 18 inches long and 8 inches wide. You'll also need some fabric. If you don't have any on hand, you can always use a Dollar Tree dish towel. Using my hat pattern, I cut the fabric out on the reverse side. I folded back the edges and I hot glued the two pieces together on the seam. After doing one side, I did the other, and you leave the bottom open. I do have a sewing machine, which would make this a little easier, but I thought I would do all three of these gnome projects with my glue gun. Once the two sides were complete, I folded over the bottom edges and made a slight hem and attached those to each side with my glue gun. Once the glue had set, I then turned the hat inside out and set it aside. I'm using my yellow paint and painting the ball, which will become the nose. I'm using the bottom part of this round gift box as the base. For the butterfly's body, I'm using this pretty pink and white striped sock and simply sliding it over the base. I'm adding about a half a cup of the white rocks to weigh it down. Once I was done, I sealed the opening with my glue gun. Once I removed the troll hair from the package, I then removed it from the headband. I then used my hot glue gun and attached it to the front of the butterfly's body. Now that the beard's in place, I'm attaching the nose in the center. Adding the hat is a personal preference. You can attach it as is, or you can add some filling. I'm going to add some filling to mine. Once I was done, I attached it to the top of the gnome's head using my glue gun. After the sides of the hat were attached, I then attached it to the nose. I removed the antennae and the wings from the butterfly headband. To attach the wings to the butterfly, I placed a line of hot glue on the side and then simply attached the wings. I decided where I wanted to place the little green antennae, and then I hot glued them into place. I'm using the petals from these daisies and from these yellow flowers as accents. I put a small slice on the side of each flower and then slipped it over the antenna. Then hot glued it into place. Once the daisies were attached, I then attached the yellow flowers. I'm going to add an accent to the top of the butterfly's hat, but once again, this is completely optional. I had this little palm left over from a Dollar Tree hat, so I thought that I would attach it to the top. To finish up the butterfly project, I placed a little hot glue on the side of the hat and then angled it to one side. Your butterfly is now complete. To make this little gnome in a bathtub, I'm starting with this plastic bathtub that I found in the toy department at Dollar Tree. You'll need one face cloth from the 2-pack, and I chose blue because it's my favorite color. I'm using 14 strands from this Dollar Tree mop head. For the gnome's body, I'm using this white sock. As a filler for the gnome's body, I'm using these vanilla scented bath salts. I'm using these foam letter stickers that I found in the craft department. Every tub needs a yellow duck, so I'm using one of these snack clips. I'm going to use this extra large craft stick as his feet and one of the table tennis balls as his nose. You'll need a little stuffing for the hat and some of these Dollar Tree pearls as the bubbles in the tub. You'll need a pipe cleaner and some paint for the nose. Along with something to embellish the hat, I'm using these little sprigs of flowers and this sheer white ribbon. Using my blue letters, I'm spelling out the word bath on the side of the tub. To make the gnome's body, I'm filling the white sock with the bath salts. To tie off the end of the sock, I'm using a ponytail band. Once done, I check the fit in the tub. To make the beard, I'm using 14 strands from this mop head. Once cut, I lie them all in a row and make sure they're as even as possible. I fold one over to find my center and then run a line of hot glue right down the middle. Using a pipe cleaner or a piece of string, you're going to lie it across in the hot glue. Then take one side of the mop strands and flip them over the other. With that done, all you need to do to make the beard is unravel each of the strands. With the beard complete, all you need to do is give it a little trim. Once your gnome's in the tub, you can always custom fit the beard. Before I place the sock in the tub, I'm going to cut the excess and tie it into a knot. Once that's complete, I place the sock into the tub. I cut off the excess ends of the pipe cleaners and I hot glued the beard onto the sock. The craft stick is going to become the gnome's little feet. I placed it in the end of the tub and marked it. I cut it and matched up the other side and made 2 feet. Now all you need to do is paint the 2 pieces and the nose. Once the nose is dry, I'm hot gluing it to the center of the beard. I'm gluing a little bit of polyfill to the top of the gnome's head. To add the towel hat, I'm folding one of the corners to the center. I tucked a little of the folded corner under the gnome's head. I wrapped one side of the towel over the other and then secured them together with some hot glue. I then hot glued the towel to the side of the gnome's beard. I hot glued the underneath of the towel and then I hot glued the towel to the nose. I twisted the remaining piece and attached it to the side of the tub. To add his feet, let me tell you, I am no artist, so all I did was take a pencil and draw some little lines onto the ends to resemble tootsies, and then I used my scissors to cut them, and hopefully they resemble feet. Once I was done, I hot glued them into place. I separated the duck clip and I'm going to add it to the tub. Once again, I used my hot glue to secure it into place. To add some bubbles, I'm using these Dollar Tree pearls. I randomly added them to the tub. Once I was done, I hot glued some of the beads together. I'm adding 3 flower sprigs as an accent. I made a little accent bow out of the ribbon. I then added the flowers and the ribbons to the hat. Once you're done, your gnome is ready to soak in his bubble bath. For the Bumblebee gnome, I'm recycling the bottom half of one of the round gift boxes. I placed a handful of rocks that I found in my yard inside to weigh it down. I'm using an old black sock as his body. I'm using another ball as his nose. For the accents, I'm using the Bumblebee headband and also one of the skirts, and I found these in the toy department. You'll need a little more of the filling, and you'll also need some paint. Once again, I'm using some of the mop strands as the beard, and you'll also need a pipe cleaner. I'll be using this black and yellow ribbon and some of the flowers from the earlier project. We'll be using some of the same flowers. You're going to need a piece of wire. I'm going to use the flower stem. My rocks are already inside, and so I'm slipping the black sock over the base. We're using the Bumblebee skirt as his hat, so you need to disassemble it. I rolled the body across the length of the fabric 1.5 times. I then cut it and made a second matching piece. I want my hat to be tall, so I placed one piece of fabric on top of the other, matched up the lines, and then hot glued the fabric together. I folded the fabric in half on the reverse side, and I'm hot gluing the two seams together. Once the glue sets up, then turn it inside out. We're making the beard exactly as we did for the bath gnome, and this time I'm using about 20 strands from the mop. After it's put together, you once again pull the strands apart. When I was done, I cut off the excess pipe cleaner, then hot glued it to the form. I then gave it a little trim. I painted the nose with my yellow paint. I'm using the stem from my flower to support the height in the hat. I cut a small hole in the top back of the gnome's head. I hot glued the wire and inserted it into place. I attached the nose to the beard. I then slipped the hat over the wire. With the hat in place, I then attached it to the nose. Once the nose was in place, I then attached the hat to both sides. Once that was done, I attached it to the back. Then, using some of the filler, I stuffed the hat. I wanted my hat to be thinner at the top than at the bottom, so using my glue gun, I just pinched some of the fabric together and attached it. I made other gnomes with Dollar Tree supplies, and I'll link that video below in case you'd like to check it out. To finish the top, I folded over the edges and glued them together. Attaching the antennas, I poked a hole in the fabric with my scissors and then just slipped them in. I'm adding a little yellow flower accent onto the bumblebee just like I did on the butterfly. I'm making an accent bow out of the black and yellow ribbon for the top of the hat. I bent the hat into the position that I liked, and then I added the bow. To finish the project, I found this little tin bumblebee in my stash and I added it to the bow. To begin this project, you'll need a stripe and a plain sock. The plain sock is more of an ankle sock, and you'll need that for the bunny's ears. You'll also need a white tube sock, and I'm using 2 of the vanilla bath salts, all from the Dollar Tree. I'm adding signs to my bunny, so I'm using these plant labels that I found in the Dollar Tree garden department. You'll be needing some chenille stems, a black marker, and a small punch if you have one. If not, you can just cut the eyes out on your own. I'm also using these 2 pretty ribbons. I'm using 1.5 containers of the Dollar Tree bath salts, and the easiest way to fill your sock is to slip the elastic end over the open jar. And depending on how big or small you want your bunny's body, you can always add more or less. To keep my bath salts in place, I'm using an elastic band and I'm securing it over the top of my sock. To make the bunny's nose, I'm pulling a bit of the fabric along with the bath salt about halfway down the sock, and then I'm securing the nose with a rubber band. I'm using my pink striped sock and I'm cutting it in about the middle of the heel. Once your sock is cut, you're then going to dress your bunny, making sure that the toe band is on the back. I'm using some white cord, but you can use string or twine, and I'm cutting it into about 8-inch lengths. I'm adding whiskers to my bunny, so I'm cutting 3 separate sections. I then tied all 3 pieces around the nose, and this does give a little extra reinforcement to the rubber band that I originally placed there. Once they were in place, I then gave each of them a little trim. When I was done, I then used my glue gun to secure the sock to the bunny, making sure to attach the sock up under the bunny's nose. After I did one side of the bunny, I then did the other. To make the ears for my bunny, I'm first starting by cutting down the center of my white sock. When I'm done, I'm tying the 2 pieces into knots until I run out of fabric. To make the ears, I'm using my pink sock. It's a non-slip, so I'm making sure that the non-slip part is in the back. And now all I'm doing is simply sliding the sock over the knots in the bunny's head, and I'm pulling it down on both sides and around the nose. Once I have it all in place, I'm then using my scissors and cutting down the center of the sock. When I'm done, I'm using 5 chenille stems, 2 for the ears and 1 to attach them together. I'm folding 2 in half, and then I'm twisting them together. After I've made my first set, I'm then making my second. When I'm done, I like to check that the chenille stems fit into the ears, and these fit great, so I'm using my last chenille stem, I'm folding it in half, and I'm attaching the 2 ears to it. I'm placing some hot glue on the top of the bunny's head, and I'm attaching the center chenille stem. Once I'm done, I'm then lining a stem in each of the ears. I'm folding each side of the fabric over to give myself a nice finished edge, and then I'm hot gluing it together. When my first ear is finished, I'm then doing the same for the second. With both my ears complete, I'm adding some hot glue to the center part of the head. I'm folding over the edges and I'm hot gluing them together. When you're done, you can now bend your bunny's ears any way you like. With my bunny's ears bent into place, I'm now hot gluing the back of the sock, and by waiting to do this, it just assures that your bunny's ears will stand up straight. I want to make an oversized bow for my bunny, so I'm using about 18 inches of this pretty Dollar Tree ribbon, and I'm folding it in half, and then I'm folding both ends into the center. This is a wired ribbon, so it's a little bit easier, and I'm just pinching it together in the center. When I'm done, I used a piece of floral wire, but you can use the cord or the twine that you used for the nose, and I'm twisting it around the center of the bow, and then all I'm doing is fluffing up the 2 sides. I cut off the ends of the floral wire, and then using my pink polka dot ribbon that I found in the baby department at the Dollar Tree, I cut a small piece and I glued it over the center of my bow. I added some hot glue on the side of the bunny's head, and then I attached the bow into place. To make the eyes, I just colored on a piece of paper with my black permanent marker, and then I used my hole punch to punch out 2 eyes. I decided where I wanted to place them, and then I just used some Aleene's tacky glue and I glued them into place. This was the quickest, easiest way for me to add some eyes, but you can always use some beads or buttons or anything you have on hand. I'm going to have my bunny hold a Happy Easter sign, so I'm using one of the plant label holders from the Dollar Tree. I printed out this Happy Easter sign and I'll link it below in my description. I cut it out and then once again using my Aleene's glue, I attached it to my little sign holder. With my sign complete, all I need to do is add a cottontail to the back of my bunny. I'm using a real cotton ball because that's all I had on hand, and I'm simply hot gluing it into place. To finish up, I tucked my Happy Easter sign into the side of the bunny, and with that, my sock bunny is complete. I'm turning my blue sock bunny into a butterfly and I'm adding on some legs. I'm using the matching blue striped socks, some butterfly wings, and chenille stems from the Dollar Tree. The first thing I need to do is take apart the butterfly headband. Once I have it apart, I'm then deciding where I want to place the wings onto the bunny. Then, using my glue gun, I attach both into place. Now that the butterfly wings are attached, it's time to decide where I want to attach the antennae. Once again, using my hot glue gun, I just attach them into place. I'm making my legs just like I made the ears. I'm folding my sock in half and I'm cutting from the toe towards the ankle, but not all the way through. I'm folding each chenille stem in half and then I'm twisting it together. When I'm done, I am attaching all 3 together, just like I did in my pink bunny video. I'm placing my 2 chenille stems inside the sock. I'm folding over the edge to give myself a nice clean seam, and then using my hot glue gun, I'm hot gluing them together. So you might notice that I've been using my scissors to assist me, and I did make this bunny a while ago. And since then, I have purchased the fingertip protectors, and I would highly recommend using those because it is super easy to burn yourself when you're making this bunny. To finish up my legs, I hot glue together the center seam. Now that my legs are complete, I'm using some ribbon that I had on hand and I'm wrapping it around the ankle part of the foot to accent the feet. Adding the legs to the bunny is super easy. All I'm doing is placing some hot glue on the top of the sock, and then I'm sitting my bunny right down on top of it. When my butterfly bunny was complete, I added it to a wreath that I made, and if you'd like to see how I made that wreath, I will link that video below in my description. And with that, my bunny butterfly is complete. My next project is coming from the automotive department, and I have to be honest with you, I stood there for a while and I had no clue what I could make with anything the Dollar Tree had until I found this funnel and I thought it looked like a gnome's hat. I'm using this pretty light green spray paint and I'm going to end up giving it 3 coats. While my hat is drying, I'm going to put together my gnome. I'm using 2 white women's socks from the Dollar Tree. I like to use the bath salts from the Dollar Tree. These are mint eucalyptus. They make the gnome smell so good, but if you don't want to use bath salts, you can always use rice. Filling the sock is super easy. You just slide it over the mouth of the container and then add in your bath salts. You can make your gnome any size you'd like. I usually use about 1.5 containers of bath salts. Once my sock is filled, I'm then tying off the end with an elastic band. I'm then sliding my second sock over it, and let me tell you, that is a tongue twister. I'm now adding a second rubber band and I'm tying this sock off as well. What I like to do is take the end of the sock and cut it in 2 and then make a couple of knots, and this way it just kind of helps shore up the rubber band. To make the gnome's beard, I'm using a purple palm keychain from the Dollar Tree, and basically what you're going to do is just remove the keychain part. I then used my scissors to cut a small hole and then removed the inside contents. After my palms opened up, I try it against my gnome body, and then I end up giving it a little bit of a haircut. And as I'm cutting it, I'm just kind of giving it a little bit of a triangular shape. I tried it against my gnome body, and then I used my glue gun to attach it into place. When I was gluing the beard on, I did make sure to leave a little open space and not glue it around the area where I'm going to be placing the nose. To make my gnome's feet, I'm using one of these Dollar Tree chalkboard heart tags. For the nose, I'm using one of these wooden half-round knobs that I had on hand, but if you don't have any of these, you can always use a plastic ornament from the Dollar Tree or one of the table tennis balls. They both work great, and I've actually used the table tennis balls in some of my past gnome projects. I'm going to be painting both of my pieces with my parchment acrylic paint. With both my pieces dry, I'm now going to attach them to the gnome. I'm adding some hot glue onto the feet, and then I'm placing my gnome right on top of it. Once that's done, I'm adding some glue to the back of my nose, and I'm attaching that in place as well. I'm then using my glue gun to attach the rest of the pieces of the gnome's beard to its body. Now that my Dollar Tree funnel hat is painted and dry, I'm going to be adding some flower accents to it. Some of these flowers came from the Dollar Tree and some I already had on hand. I removed the petals from the stems and I'm going to be hot gluing them onto my hat. I'm going to be attaching my flowers in an angled circular pattern. I continued adding a dot of hot glue and attaching my flowers. As you can see, I'm continuing to add the flowers at an angle around the hat. When I was picking my flowers for this project, I made sure to find one color flower that matched my gnome's beard. Once all my flowers were glued into place, I then went back, and filled in some of the open areas with more flowers and leaves just to kind of fill the hat out. To finish off the top of my hat, I took one sprig of the flowers and I bent it at an angle. Then using my glue gun, I added on some of the matching flowers from my hat. Once all my flowers were attached, I added some hot glue to the end of the sprig and I just stuck it into the top of my funnel hat. To add the hat to my gnome, I'm simply adding some hot glue inside of my funnel, and then I'm placing it over the gnome's head. To finish up, I'm adding some of the small matching flowers to his beard. And once all my flowers are added to his beard, my funnel gnome is now complete. All my supplies are from the Dollar Tree. Getting started, we're going to use one of the Dollar Tree elf headbands. We're also going to need 2 sets of elf legs. You're also going to need one of the Dollar Tree cotton mop heads. I'm using this plastic chicken wing bottle that I bought at the Dollar Tree. It's 8.5 inches tall. You can use anything that you have at home that's about 8.5 inches tall and that you can fill and has a lid. I'm using some Epsom salt that I had left over from a previous project. I made snowballs that won't melt, and I'll actually link that video below if you'd like to check it out. You can use rice or sand or anything that will keep the bottle heavy and upright. You'll also need 1 small ornament. I'm not sure what color I'm using, so I'm going to try out all 3. You'll need one of the little gift boxes and some polyfill or cotton balls or tissue. I'm using the empty chicken wing bottle. I washed it, removed the label, and I've dried it. I'm filling mine with the Epsom salt. I made a makeshift funnel out of an old cookie box, and that's going to help me get the salt into the bottle. I liked using the Epsom salt because you can see a little bit underneath the mop, and keeping it white, it kind of blended in. Once the bottle is full, just screw on the top. Once you remove the mop head from its plastic covering, it's now time to attach it to the bottle. I turned it over to expose the bottom, and you can see that there is a plastic flat end. Now all you need to do using your hot glue gun is to attach it to the top cap of your bottle. When you're gluing it, make sure that you center it on the top of the cap. Let the glue set for a couple of minutes and then just fix the hair on the mop. Once that's done, now it's time to add the little elf hat. Once you remove the hat from the actual headband, it's now time to glue it onto the top. Now all you need to do is use a generous amount of hot glue on the black part of the mop head. Then just slide the elf hat over the top. Once that's complete, it's now time to add on the legs. At the top, they're attached to a little red skirt. All you're going to do is just cut them away from it. The legs had a little bit of polyfill inside, but I wanted them to be full, so all I did was just stuff some of the polyfill inside. And like I said, if you don't have that on hand, you can use cotton balls or tissue or anything That will fill them up. Before we attach them to the bottom of the bottle, we have to find our center point. So using the center of his hat, I just marked on the very bottom with my marker where the center of his body was. Once you have that center mark, all you need to do is use some hot glue and glue your legs to the bottom. You glue one leg on one side of the mark and then the other leg on the other side. You're going to hot glue together the little red skirt that the legs were originally attached to. Give it a minute to set up, and then we're going to hot glue it onto the bottom of the bottle. The bottle is slightly front heavy because of the legs, and this kind of balances off the weight. And it also hides where the legs were cut and attached to the base. I couldn't decide what color nose I wanted to use for this gnome, so I had a sparkly green, a red, and a gold, and I figured I would just try them all and see what looked the best. I thought the gold ornament nose was the best complement, so all I did was hot glue it and kind of tuck it up underneath the hat. Now we're going to add the arms, and like last time we cut off the legs, this time we're just going to cut off the feet. Once the feet are removed, then just cut the rest of the legs away from the little red skirt. Then using your glue gun, you're going to close up one end on each arm. Now, just like the legs, you're going to use some polyfill or anything that you have on hand, and you're going to stuff the arms. My gnome is going to be holding a little gift box, but you can have yours hold anything that you have on hand. I glued the last two ends closed, and these will end up being little hands to hold the present. I put some glue on the finished edge, and then I pressed it onto the gift. And then I did the exact same thing to the other arm and attached it to the gift. Now they're ready to glue onto your gnome. I pulled some of the hair of the mop away from each side, and this way it allowed me to decide where I wanted to place the arms. Then using my glue gun, I attached one arm on each side, making sure that the gift was centered in the middle. Once everything was glued into place, it was now time to groom this little gnome's hair. Another option is if you'd like a two-sided gnome, all you need to do is just add a nose and embellish the top. This little guy is complete and ready for Christmas. To make my mini gnome, I'm using a baby sock and some scented bath salts from the Dollar Tree. To fill my sock, I just place it over the mouth of the bath salts, and then I fill it so that it's about 3/4 of the way full. I then use an elastic band to hold it all together. Once that's done, and for a little extra security, I like to cut the top and make a knot. To make the beard, I'm using a red pom-pom keychain from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to pull it apart. I cut a small V out of the palm, and then from there I just kept measuring it against my gnome to decide how big I wanted the beard to be. To attach it, I placed some hot glue on the body, and I left myself about an inch between the knot and the beard. You can use all types of things for noses. I'm going to use one of the larger glitter vase fillers for the nose on my gnome. I used some hot glue and I attached the nose into the center. For the hat, I'm using one of these furry Dollar Tree hats, but you can use anything you have on hand. I placed it around the head to get my measurement, and then I cut it away at an angle. When I was done, I turned my fabric inside out, I flattened it down, and then I cut it into a triangle. I still have it turned inside out, and now I'm hot gluing the two seams together. Now that my glue has cooled, I'm going to turn the hat back to the right side. With my hat ready, I'm gluing down the two tabs on the top, and then I'm slipping the hat over the gnome's head. Once I have it where I want it, I'm then using my glue gun and I'm securing it into place. I always attach the nose first, and then I glue down each of the sides and then the back. I really like using the scented bath salts when I'm making these because they smell so good when you're working on them. With everything in place, I'm folding the hat over to one side, and I'm using some of the Dollar Tree scatter hearts as an accent. I'm kind of flattening down the pointy end of the hat, and then I'm hot gluing on one of the hearts. I'm then adding some glue to the back of the hat. I'm matching up the hearts, and I'm attaching them together. With my two hearts in place, I'm attaching two of the smaller pink hearts to give it a layered look. I thought I would add a bow to the hat, so I'm using some of the red and white gingham ribbon from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to make a simple bow. I trimmed off the ends, and then I glued it to the front of the hat. To give my bow a little more personality, I'm going to hot glue one of the red and the pink scatter hearts to the front. To give this little gnome a Valentine's overload, I'm going to use some of these foam accent hearts that I picked up at the Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to attach them all over his hat. So the good part about these hearts are they are self-adhesive. The bad part, not so much fun trying to peel the backs off of them, but for sure, once you attach them in place, they're not going anywhere. I'm going to give my gnome a little set of feet, and I'm using one of the heart tags from the Dollar Tree along with my pink acrylic paint. With my heart dry, I'm adding on some hot glue, and then I'm attaching the two pieces together. And with that, our mini gnome is complete. Getting started, I'm using one of the white socks as the body. I'm then going to fill it with my bath salts. Filling the body is quick and easy. You simply slide the sock over the end of the open container. You can make your gnome any size you'd like. I use about 1.5 containers of the bath salt. You tie off the open end with an elastic, and I actually like to follow it up with not just an elastic but also using a hairband. Using your scissors, cut down the center of the sock top. Then just tie off a couple of knots. For this gnome, I decided to use this pattern sock. You'll only need one, and all you do is simply slide it over the base of the gnome body. Once he's dressed, using your glue gun, attach both sock tops together. Adding his top hat is super easy. You're going to slide the two pieces of the white sock into the top of the hat and then secure it all together with your glue gun. You'll only need one of these orange palms as a gnome beard, but I grabbed a handful. I removed it from the package, and then I cut the back open, and I couldn't believe what they had hidden inside. It was some additional faux fur, which I don't need for this project, but I will definitely hang on to and use in the future. I flattened out the orange fabric, And I really like the shape, so I didn't even need to cut it, and all I did was place it up against my gnome, making sure that I tucked it up against his hat. With my glue gun, I'm only attaching the bottom part of the beard to the body. The reason we're not attaching the beard completely to the body is because we have to add the nose. But before we add the nose, I'm going to give my gnome a little pair of feet. I trimmed the sides and the stem from the shamrock and then attached it to the bottom of the gnome with some hot glue. To make this gnome's nose, I'm painting a ping pong ball. Once it's dry, I'm ready to attach it. I pulled away the top part of the beard, decided where I was going to place the nose, and then using my scissors, I cut a little V in the beard. With that complete, I could now add the nose. I then placed a dot of glue where I wanted my nose positioned, then simply pressed it into place. Now that your nose is attached, use your glue gun to attach the rest of the beard. Now that my gnome is put together, he looks like he may be in need of a little haircut. So using my scissors, I'm just trimming up the sides of his beard. Once he's all trimmed up, you can leave him as is. For my gnome, I'm going to give him a shamrock pipe. It's super easy to make. I'm using one of the candle snuffers from the Dollar Tree. The end is detachable, so I'm removing it. Then using some E6000, I'm attaching the two pieces together. The bottom of the cone is movable, so I placed some E6000 on that. I then added the piece that I detached up under the cone, then added some E6000 along the length of the base. Using Scotch tape, I attached it to a piece of waxed paper, then allowed 24 hours for it to dry. Once my pipe was dry, I shortened it a bit by cutting the extra piece of metal on the end. I decided to paint mine this pretty gold color, but you could paint yours any color you like. I don't have any gold spray paint on hand, so that's why I'm using my acrylic paint. But if you have spray paint, it would definitely work up much quicker. I'm going to cut some of the shamrocks from this shamrock garland. Once you're done, all you need to do is use your hot glue gun and attach them to the inside of the pipe. I continued gluing them in until the pipe was full of shamrocks. I decided to add a simple accent to the pipe. I'm using a green pencil, and all I'm doing is just adding a little accent line around the edge of the pipe. Attaching the pipe to the gnome, you'll need to use your scissors. I decided where I wanted to attach the pipe, and then using my scissors, I moved them back and forth to make a hole through the beard and into the body of the gnome. After that, I just worked the end of the pipe into the hole. Now that it was in place, I just secured it with a little dab of hot glue. This leprechaun is pretty much ready for St. Patrick's Day, but I did have a little piece of extra beard left over, and I decided to add it under his nose. And once that was done, he is complete. For this gnome, we're going to follow the exact same instructions as we did for our first gnome. I chose the argyle and shamrock pattern sock, and all I'm doing is removing the foot part, sliding it over the body, and then securing the bottom with my glue gun. Once again, I'm cutting the white ends of the sock in half and then knotting it. I'm pulling the end of the sock up over the white knots. I'm using another one of my flattened palms as his beard. I placed some hot glue along the inside edges, then attached it to the front of the gnome, making sure to leave room for the hat. I'm adding some arms to this gnome, and all I'm doing is cutting off the top and the bottom of the sock mate. I'm then cutting it in half lengthwise. I'm now opening up one side and using my glue gun, I'm going to run a line of glue in the center. I'm folding one side in and then I'm doing the exact same thing for the other side. You're going to do this for both sections of the sock, and when you're done, you'll have 2 arms. Using your hot glue gun, you're just going to finish off the arms by closing both of the ends. Now your arms are complete. To make the hat for the gnome, we need to remove it from the headband. Once it's free, cut it away from the side pieces. Very carefully, using your scissors, cut away the stitching. Then gently pull apart the 2 sections. For this hat to fit over your gnome's head, you're going to need to cut off the 2 top pieces of the white sock. Then slide the little St. Patrick's Day hat right over the top of the gnome. Once that's in place, we're now going to add his arms. Decide where you would like them to end up in the front, and then just hot glue them to the sides of your gnome. My leprechaun gnome is going to be holding a little foam shamrock. I'm using my hot glue gun to glue it to his hands. I'm attaching his nose with some hot glue. Once that's in place, I pull the hat down, tuck it around, and secure it with my hot glue. To finish, I used another one of the sparkly shamrocks and made him a set of feet. Then used my glue gun to attach them. To give this gnome a little bit of personality, I decided to move his hair just a bit and give him a mustache. And now he is ready to celebrate. For the girl gnome, I'm making the same bath salt body. And I'm also using one additional white sock as the outside covering. Once again, I'm cutting the ends of the sock and knotting them. Then using a hairband to secure the 2 socks together. For her hat, I'm using this cute pair of striped St. Patrick's Day socks. I'm cutting each pair in half on the back seam. I'm then cutting off the heavy elastic ends. I'm placing front sides together and then matching the pattern. I'm then gluing the pieces together. If you have a sewing machine, that will make this project even neater. I'm just trying to do this all with a glue gun. Once you're done gluing it all back together, just clip off the end toe part. Now your hat has 2 open ends. I'm using my 6 bendable curlers. I'm hot gluing 3 to the upper part of the hat. Now I'm going to fold the bottom ends over and give myself a nice little hem. Once you're done, turn your hat inside out. I'm now attaching the last 3 bendable curlers to the top of the gnome body. I'm making some braids for my gnome, so I'm using this pretty orange hair. I decided how long I wanted her braids to be, and then I cut the hair away from the package. Once I found the center of her hair, I used a hairband to secure it. I used the gnome's body to weigh down the center of the hair so that I could braid it. And when I was done, I used another hairband to end the braid. Using my glue gun, I attached the braids to the back of the gnome's head, making sure that they were centered. I then added a little hot glue to both sides. To close off the end of the hat, I used a white tie wrap. Now that the end of the hat is closed, I filled it with some batting. Once that was done, I then slipped the hat over the gnome's head, sliding the bendable rollers over each other. I pulled the sides of the hat down evenly on each side of the gnome and then hot glued them into place. I then glued the back of the hat. I decided where I wanted her nose to be placed, and then using my hot glue gun, I attached the top and the bottom. I had some buttons on hand, so I'm using this orange button and the green. I'm just gluing one on top of the other and then adding them to the front of the gnome as an accent. To top off her hat, I'm adding one of these sparkly shamrocks from one of the headbands. I'm using some hot glue to attach it. I'm using this pretty sparkly green ribbon that I had left over from Christmas, and all I'm doing is making 2 bows for the front of her braids. It's a little difficult to work with, but after I manipulated it a bit, I finally got it into 2 little bows. I hot glued a piece of matching ribbon to cover the hair bands. Once that was done, I just attached a little bow to each braid. Now we're going to give her the same little pair of shamrock feet that I gave the past 2 gnomes. To finish up my girl gnome, I'm going to make a bow out of this really cute orange polka dot ribbon. I'm adding the bow to her hat with a little bit of hot glue. A little bend of her hat and she is ready for St. Patrick's Day. To start my snowman gnome, I'm using one of the round gift boxes from the Dollar Tree, and I'm removing the bow and the ribbon. To give it a little weight so that it won't tip over, I'm just using some of these rocks that I found at the Dollar Tree, but you can use anything that you have on hand. I'm running a bead of glue around the top edge and then replacing the cover. I'm using a white Dollar Tree sock, big enough to cover the gnome's body. When I'm done, I'm cutting the top of the sock into 2 pieces and I'm tying it into a knot. To give the snowman's body some texture, I'm using one of the microfiber dusting pads. I'm using my hot glue gun and I'm attaching it around the base of the gnome's body. To make the gnome's beard, I'm using one of the Dollar Tree mop heads. Using my scissors, I'm cutting 26 individual pieces. Once they're all cut, I'm then going to lie each of them side by side. When I'm done, I'm folding the end piece over to find my middle. When I'm finished, I'm then running a bead of glue down the center. I'm then using a chenille stem, and it doesn't matter what color. I'm going to take it and I'm going to place it into the glue. Once I'm done, I'm then folding one side of the mop onto the other. To fluff out my snowman's beard, I'm unraveling each of the mop pieces. Once you're done, and somehow along the way, the footage of me attaching the beard, poof, it has disappeared. So I'm going to show you how I attached one of these beards to one of the other gnomes that I made. And so with the exception of the colors being a little different, it's the exact same way. I cut off the excess 2 chenille stems and I placed some hot glue along the top of the beard. Once I was done, I placed it against the gnome's body and I gave it a haircut. For the nose, if you have any type of carrot that would work, I would use that. For me, I'm using one of the Dollar Tree table tennis balls. I'm using my orange acrylic paint and I'm going to end up giving it 2 coats. It's so funny because my husband and my daughter both asked me, "Why are you painting it orange?" And I thought, isn't that the color of a snowman's nose? Once the nose is dry, I'm attaching it by placing a dot of hot glue just above the center of the beard. I put the nose in place and just held it there a quick second until it set up. To make the gnome's hat, I'm using a black sock and 2 of the bendable rollers from the Dollar Tree. You're going to need some stuffing for your hat, and I'm recycling some from a pillow. I'm turning my sock inside out. Using my glue gun, I'm running 2 beads of hot glue on the top of my sock, and then I'm attaching my bendable rollers. Once they set up, I'm then turning the sock back to the right side, and it might take you a second to do this, but just kind of bend the rollers as you're turning the sock inside out. With that complete, I'm now stuffing my snowman's hat. I kept stuffing it until I came to just a bit past the heel. Now that my sock hat is completely stuffed, to attach it, I'm placing it over the top of the gnome, and using my hot glue gun, I'm attaching the front to the nose. And once again, attaching my hat, I'm using my glue gun and I'm pulling down on the back, and I'm also pulling down on both of the sides. I want to round off the front of the hat, so I'm adding just a bit more of the stuffing. I have a button collection and I picked out 4 that I'm going to use as accents. I'm also using this really pretty snowflake ornament from the Dollar Tree. I snipped off the hanger end and I removed the little crystal from the center. I then replaced it with one of the buttons. I placed the other 3 buttons on his beard to find my placement, and then using my glue gun, I attached them in place. To give my hat a little personality, I'm finding where I attached the bendable rollers, and then I'm just bending the hat at an angle. To add my snowflake accent, I'm placing a dot of hot glue on the hat and then securing it into place. I wanted to give my snowman 2 arms, so I went outside and I snipped off 2 little branches. To attach them, I used my scissors to make a hole into the cardboard base and then secured the arm with my glue gun. After my first arm was in place, I then did the exact same thing for the second. What's a snowman without a broom? I'm going to make him one with this Dollar Tree raffia and a straight 4-inch long stick. I opened up the raffia and I cut it in half. I then took one of the halves and folded it into 4ths. I then stuck the stick through the center and used a piece of raffia to tie them together. I snipped away some of the messy edges and I gave the bottom a haircut. I'm using some of the buffalo check Dollar Tree ribbon and I'm attaching a piece to cover where I tied on the raffia. I used my hot glue gun to secure it into place. When I was done, I used the same ribbon. I made a simple bow, and then using my hot glue gun, I attached it to the broom. I'm using one of the snowflakes from this pack I bought at the Dollar Tree. I removed the little silver insert and I attached it to my broom as an accent. Adding the broom to my snowman's hand is as easy as using a little hot glue. I had some little birds in my stash, so I decided to add those as an accent as well. I attached this little blue one to the top of his broom and the red cardinal to the top of his stick hand. With that, my sweet snowman gnome is complete. I'm starting my girl gnome with her doll, or it could be a mama with a baby, using one of the pink crew socks from the Dollar Tree. You'll be needing a knee sock and some baby socks, and I found these at the Dollar Tree as well. I'm using the vanilla scented bath salts from the Dollar Tree. These are both 17.6 ounces, and you're going to need about 1.5. I'm also using 16 strands from a Dollar Tree mop head. Filling my gnome body is super easy. I'm taking the end of the sock, I'm placing it over the mouth of the bath salts, and then simply filling it up. I'm using about 1.5 containers, but you can make your gnome any size you'd like, and if you don't have bath salts on hand, you can always use rice. To keep my bath salts neatly in place, I'm securing the end of the sock with a rubber band. As a backup to the rubber band, I like to cut down the center of the excess part of the sock and then tie it into a couple of knots. To add on the hair, I'm using a chenille stem and I'm measuring it against the gnome to see about where I want her hair placed, and then I'm cutting the chenille stem to size. Once that's done, I'm then cutting 16 strands from the mop head. I then separate my strands into 2 groups of 8. I glue 8 on one end of the chenille stem and then 8 on the other. After I glue down the first 4, I'm then adding the other 4 onto the top. Once I'm done, I set them aside to cool, and now I'm getting ready to paint my nose. I'm recycling a wooden knob that I had on hand, but if you don't have something like this, you can always use a plastic ornament from the Dollar Tree or even one of the table tennis balls. I've used those in some of my past gnomes, which I'll link below in case you'd like to check them out. To cover the yellow, I'm using some red acrylic paint to paint my nose. To add my hair, I'm wrapping it around the back just under the knot, and I'm securing it into place with my hot glue gun. Once I'm done, I then use my glue gun and attach the 2 sock tails to the body. I'm using one of the knee socks as the gnome's hat, and I'm going to be stuffing it with some of my recycled polyfill. You can make your hat as long or as large as you want it. I'm going to fill mine with the polyfill till just about the heel. I'm folding under the top part of the knee sock that says love, so only the pink and white stripes will show. After that, I just slip it right over the gnome's head. I then use my hot glue gun to attach my nose. Once it's in place, I then glue the hat to the nose. I glue on the back and then the 2 sides. With everything glued into place, I'm now going to make the gnome's hair. I want to give my gnome 2 ponytails, so I'm unraveling each of the mop head strands. Once I'm done with one side, I then move over to the other. Before I tie my ponytails off, I want to attach the gnome's arms, and I'm going to be using one of the baby socks from the Dollar Tree. I'm cutting it down the center so I have two pieces, and then I'm cutting it across at the heel. I'm gluing the two inside pieces of the sock together, and once it cools, I'm then turning it inside out so that the right side of the sock is showing. Once both arms are complete, I'm tucking down the unfinished edge and then using a dot of hot glue to keep it in place. When I'm done, I'm hot gluing one arm on each side and I'm hiding it under the hair. Once they're both in place, I'm then adding a dot of hot glue and attaching the two hands together. With both of her arms attached, I'm now going to make the ponytails. I'm deciding where I want them to be, and then I'm securing them in place with a rubber band. I'm using this pretty Valentine's ribbon that I found at the Dollar Tree, and mine didn't have much this year, but I did find this, and I'm going to make two simple bows to add onto her ponytails. Now that they're both complete, I'm going to attach them by placing a dot of hot glue just above the rubber band. With both of the bows attached, it's now time to give her a haircut. I decided the length I wanted it to be, and then using my scissors, I simply gave her a trim. I want to give her a pair of shoes, so I'm using one of the heart-shaped chalkboard tags from the Dollar Tree. I added some hot glue and then placed my gnome right on top of it. I'm using some of this pretty red berry garland that I bought at the Dollar Tree, and I'm wrapping it around her hat just as a bit of an accent. It has a wire base, so I just bent it into place. To give it a Valentine's vibe, I'm adding some of these pretty pink and red hearts from the Dollar Tree, and using my glue gun, I'm attaching them into place. To give the end of her hat a little accent, I'm wrapping a piece of ribbon around and tying it off into a little ball. I made another simple bow with my ribbon and I attached it with my glue gun. I then glued a heart in the center of the bow. To give my hat a little bit of a bend, I just added in some hot glue and I held it in place until it set up. To make the baby for my gnome to hold, I'm using one of the little baby socks from the Dollar Tree, and basically what I'm going to do is just tuck in the bottom, hot glue it in place, and then also roll the sides around on themselves, hot glue them into place so you turn the sock into a little roll. You want her to be able to hold the baby, so I'm cutting about an inch off of the end. For the baby or the doll's nose, I'm using one of these tiny vase fillers. I know I'm going to be adding a hat, so I decided where I wanted the nose to be, and then I hot glued it into place. I'm using this pink and white striped baby sock, and I'm cutting off the end where the toe would go. On the open end where I cut, I'm adding some hot glue at an angle, and then I'm going to twist the top of the sock into a point. You may need to custom fit the hat to the doll's head. All you need to do is run a line of hot glue on the back of the hat and then attach the two sides together. Once you place the hat on the head, you just hot glue it into place. I'm using some of the same red pip berries to accent the doll's hat. I want to add some heart accents to the hat, so I'm going to be cutting some away from these Dollar Tree Valentine necklaces. To finish up my tiny gnome, I'm hot gluing the bead accents onto the hat. And to finish up the project, all you need to do is place the doll or the baby, depending upon if it's a girl or a mama, into the arms. If you've made it to the end, thank you so much for stopping by and making these projects with me. If you're new and you think, hey, I'd like to come back and hang out with her again, don't forget to click that little red subscribe button below and tap on the notification bell. That will notify you every time I upload a new video. Have a great day and I will see you soon. Bye, everybody.